All right, guys, so today we're going to be taking notes on chapter 6.6. We're going to be graphing systems of linear inequalities. So everybody in front of them right now should have a notebook, a pen or pencil. You don't necessarily need a calculator, but have one just in case. So I obviously don't expect you to be fully drawing the graphs into your notebooks. If you would like to, go right ahead, be my guest. Otherwise, just take some notes on what I'm saying. You will be using some practice on this in the future. My periods E and F class, we already took notes on this, so this will be like a nice little review for you guys. Or if you were absent that day, this will be an introduction. So let's get started. We have our objectives here. We're going to solve a system of linear inequalities by graphing. We're also going to apply that system of linear inequalities. So we've worked with inequalities before. And in working with inequalities, we've already utilized all of this information. So this is my less than symbol. My less than symbol is going to have a dotted line when we're trying to graph it, and we're going to have shading below. This right here is going to be my greater than symbol. We're also going to have a dotted line for this inequality, and we're going to be shading above. This is my less than or equal to inequality. It's going to be a solid line with shading below. And this is my greater than or equal to inequality, which is a solid line with shading above. So this is a perfect opportunity for you guys to just pause the video super quick, copy this down into your notebook so that you have this key piece of information. It's going to be really, really helpful to you when you're graphing. Also keep in mind that when you're graphing, you're using y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So we're going to move right along. My first example, my first set of system of inequalities is x is greater than 3 and y is less than or equal to 4x minus 9. So our first step here is to graph x is greater than 3. There is no y-intercept, okay? Notice that this x here means that I'm going to be working with my x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and you're going to put a point right here at 3. Because there's technically no slope, we have undefined slope. So with any undefined slope, we are going to have a vertical line up and down. And because I have a greater than symbol, my line is going to be dotted. So if I were to shade for just this line, knowing that my inequality is greater than, would I be shading to the left of my dotted purple line, or am I going to be shading to the right? Take a second and submit your answer for me. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and graph our second line on the same exact graph. So we have y is less than or equal to 4x minus 9, where b, so my y-intercept is negative 9, and my slope is positive 4. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to put your point at negative 9, which is right here. We're going to put this point on our y-axis, and my slope is 4. It's right in front of that x. So you're actually going to be moving up 4 units and to the right 1. We're going to have a solid line because it's less than or equal to. That equal to portion is indicating that we're going to have a solid line. Now, it's less than or equal to. So would I be shading above the yellow line or would I be shading below the yellow line? Take a second and submit your answer. And then finally, we're going to shade taking into consideration the fact that we're shading for both graphs. So if you said you were shading to the right of the purple line, excellent job. We also need to take into consideration that we're going to be shading below the yellow or orange line. I thought it was yellow, but it's orange. So we're going to be shading below. So you cannot keep this part right here in because that is above the yellow line. So you want to take into consideration both lines shading to the right of the purple and below the orange. We're going to do 2 more examples, and then you're going to try one by yourself. So my second example here, my system of inequalities is y is greater than 4 and y is less than or equal to 10x minus 10. So first step is we're going to graph y is greater than 4. Because it's a y in this spot instead of an x now, we can put our first point at 4 on my y-axis right here. And then we can create, there's no slope, we have a slope of 0 this time. So since I have a slope of 0, I'm going to be creating a horizontal line, and it is going to be dotted because of that greater than symbol. So now take a second, determine whether we're going to shade above my purple dotted line or below my purple dotted line. Take a second and submit your answer for me. For our second example, we have y is less than or equal to 10x minus 10. Notice that I have a slope of 10 and a y-intercept of negative 10. So my first step is going to be putting my first point at negative 10 on my y-axis. Because I have a slope of 10, I'm going to be moving up 10 units to the right 1. We have a positive slope. And the line is going to be solid due to that less than or equal to. So take a second and determine whether you're going to shade above your yellow-orange line or you're going to shade below your yellow-orange line. Submit your answer for me. And then the last step is shading or utilizing the shading for both of the lines. So if you said you were going to shade above the purple line, that's perfect because we have that greater than symbol right here. So shading above the purple line, while still keeping in mind that we have to shade below the orange-yellow line. Okay, so taking in consideration both lines, we're shading above the purple and below the orange. So this little section right here is the only piece that's going to be shaded. We can't have any of this shaded because that's below the purple line and that's out of our restrictions here. And we can't have any of this side shaded because it's above the orange line and we have this restriction for the orange line right here. Our last example, we're going to graph y is greater than 6x minus 7 and y is less than or equal to negative x plus 9. So we're going to graph, our first step is to graph y is greater than 6x minus 7. So we have we have a y-intercept of negative 7 and a slope of positive 6. So we're going to go ahead and put our first point at negative 7 on my y-axis, because that's my y-intercept. Having a slope of negative 6 causes us to go up 6 to the right 1. We're going to have a dotted line because of that greater than symbol. So now take a second to determine whether we're going to shade above the blue dotted line or below the blue dotted line. Submit your answer. Now for our second line, we're going to have y is less than or equal to negative x plus 9, where our first point, our y-intercept is 9, so our first point is going to go at 9 on the y-axis. My slope is negative 1, so I'm going to move down 1 to the right 1, and we're going to have a solid line because of that equal to, the less than or equal to. So I want you to take a second and determine if you're going to shade above the purple line or below the purple line. Go ahead and submit that answer. And then finally, we're shading our graph with both of our lines. So if you said you were shading above the blue dotted line, awesome job. We also need to take into consideration the restriction of shading below. It says shade below the below line. Perfect. I meant shade below the purple line. So you're shading below the purple line as well. So again, taking into consideration the restrictions of above the blue dotted line and below the solid purple line. Okay, now I want you to try one on your own. You have two options here. It says solve the system of inequalities by graphing. Select the best option. You're either going to choose option A or you're going to choose option B. You can submit that answer into Ed Puzzle. Thank you so much for following along with the notes. I will be assigning an IXL for you guys to complete tomorrow. Thanks, guys.